Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Massacre of St. Bartholomew Eve, written by John Lutherati and Donald Tosh. Now, this story is set during the French War of Religion, which happened between 1562 to 1598. And this story in particular focuses on the massacre of St. Bartholomew Day in the 23rd of August, 1572. And I got to explain a bit about the title, because the title is St. Bartholomew Eve. And obviously, if anybody knows about the history, the massacre actually appears on the day. You see, this story actually deals with the build-up to the massacre, as you only actually see the massacre right at the end of the last episode. So the eve is also the eve of the battle. So it's the eve of the massacre of St. Bartholomew. So, by the way, I do apologise if I keep mispronouncing that title. It is very difficult. Also, there's a massive lens flare. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can darken it. That better? Anyway, so that's a bit of the detail about the historical element of the story, because this story is a pure historical. And it's very strange, as the Doctor's hardly in it, and it's mainly a Stephen-focused story. Now, I also got to mention as well, this story is lost in the BBC archives. No surviving episodes exist. In fact, this is one of the most badly damaged of the missing episodes, as there's no clips and not even a frame of it exists, which is a crying shame, because it's directed by Paddy Russell, the first female Doctor Who director. So, and she's the big director. She'll go on to do a few other Doctor Who stories, like Horror of Fang Rock, I believe. So it is a shame that her first Doctor Who work is sadly missing. So let's delve into the Massacre of St. Bartholomew Eve. I keep pronouncing that wrong, sorry. So the Doctor and Stephen land in 5072 Paris. And yeah, this is the second time that the Doctor's been to Paris in the series, which I find really funny. And I also like the fact that he knows a lot about the history in this story, because it has been established that the Doctor's a huge fan of French history with the French Revolution, and in episodes like The Unearthly Child and The Reign of Terror. So it is kind of cool that we're back here. And so they go into a little pub, and the Doctor realises where they are, and he wants to meet with a famous scientist of the time, the man who discovers germs, I believe. I could be wrong. I didn't do much research on this poor fellow. I do apologise. He's only in it for like a scene, and the Doctor tells Stephen to wait in this pub for him. But when the Doctor leaves, somebody kind of recognises the Doctor and so follows him. So let's just touch on the Doctor's moments. So the Doctor meets up with this guy, and you can kind of see that he's kind of like hiding the fact that he's a scientist. And there's a great scene with him, and that's literally all you see the Doctor for part 1, and you don't see him again until part 4. So this feels very something like Big Finish would do, where if the Doctor's unavailable, they kind of like write him out in the first episode and then bring him back in the last. But this is a Doctor Who story with William Hartnell in it, so that's very strange. So the story mainly focuses on Stephen. Now, this story really, if you like Stephen, this story is very, very good. And like I've said before, John Lutherati's, I love his previous stories with Marco Polo and the Aztecs. And luckily, his final Doctor Who story is phenomenal. If you like, it's a much more like a period piece, as Stephen befriends a group of can't remember what religion they are, but they basically work for one of the higher-ups in the King's Court. This guy they call the Sea Bagger, but Stephen doesn't know this. Stephen doesn't know this until later on in the story. And so Stephen befriends them and just has like a kind of a laugh. And I like these interaction with him and these two other characters, Nicholas and Gaston. Gaston! Yes, Gaston. But yeah, and Nicholas he's like a very nobleman, and Gaston, he's a bit of a full of himself. But the three of them really work off well each other, even though it's not like a huge deal of them working off, but they are likeable enough that they can carry the story. And Stephen bumps into a girl who's running away, and so the three men then ask her questions on why she's running and stuff, and she explains that she overheard a plot to kill basically their leader, the Sea Bagger. Again, I can't remember his name. Roger, I believe his name is. I'm just going to call him Roger. And Stephen is waiting there for the doctor, and the doctor doesn't show up. So, and then we have little details about what's going on, and there's these other kingsmen who are like planning these assassinations of religions because they hate the Catholics. And yeah, it's like a period piece. So if you don't like period drama, it's not really for you. It is a lot in vein of the Reign of Terror, which is fair enough because they're both set around at the same time and they're both in France. It's a lot of it's like a political thriller set around this time, and the costumes, from what we can gather, look incredible and stuff. So yeah, the story is kind of, it's not like an epic adventure like the Daleks' Master Plan. It's very much more focused on telling a story about this historical event, or at least the build up to it. And it does really work really well as we get to learn the players and who wants to kill who, and basically what's happening. And so Nicholas and Gaston, they don't really know what to believe, because even though this girl overheard it, she could be mistaken. And whilst they're in the house, the abbot, a religious figure in the Catholic religion, is trying to find this girl so he can basically silence her. And they see him and they see him out through the window, and Stephen recognises him. He looks exactly like the Doctor. He's played by William Hartnell. It's very cool to see a story detailing with a double ganger kind of plot line. Oh, I forgot to mention, here's a fun fact. When John Ratti wrote this story, he wrote a script, and then he brought it into the BBC, and they basically asked him to completely rewrite it. Based on the same idea, the build up to the Massacre, and he basically rewrote it so it's like a completely different episode. I think the double ganger idea is still in it, but I'm not quite sure. And then when this episode went missing, and the audio went missing for a while, because the audio we got from fans who recorded it off their TVs, and even the script, the Ed script went missing, and so we only had for a while the script, the original script. And when John Ratti novelised his story for the 1980s, he actually based it off that script. So the novelisation of this story is completely different. And when the audio of this was found and people could actually hear the story, they were in shock and awe that it was completely different. It's very bizarre. Never never in the history of anything has something like that happened, where we found something that is completely different to what we knew of it. But yeah, that's just a little fun fact. I haven't read the novelisation, so that could be absolutely brilliant. I hope it is. I mean, John Urati is a fantastic Doctor Who writer, with these 3 trilogies of pure historical stories just really work. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. So Stephen kind of befriends this girl, and she kind of build her up as if like she's going to become like, she's kind of like Stephen's companion. And Stephen basically believes that the Doctor is in disguise as the Abbot for some reason, and so he basically pretends to be someone else, and he takes that girl to the Abbot's office. And when he gets there, he actually like basically betrays this girl, and the girl turns around with him and stuff. Oh, by the way, at this point, because he recognised the Abbot as a friend, Nicholas and Gaston don't trust Stephen, so there you go. And Stephen kind of overhears a plot once he's there to murder Roger. And so, because before he overheard someone talk about the assassination of the sea beggar, but when he tried to talk to Gaston, he thought he was like an assassin, so he dismissed him. But now he knows that it's this Roger guy, so he goes to Nicholas, and Nicholas finds him, and just before he gets assassinated, Nicholas kind of like shouts his name, and so the assassination misses as it hits his shoulder, and this guy is wounded and not killed, which starts sort of the uprising. And so Stephen then takes this girl to where the Doctor was last. He last knew where the Doctor was, in this shop. But before that, the Abbot basically explains to his header up that the assassination failed. And so this guy, he basically puts the blame on the Abbot. What he does is he kills him and blames it on Roger and his people. So that basically starts the whole uprising, that these people killed the Abbot, but they didn't really. And Stephen then sees the body, thinking it's the Doctor, and he's dead. So they're looking for the TARDIS key to try and get into the TARDIS. But when they're there, they actually find the Doctor alive. And it's only here that the Doctor realises what day it is. And so he tells the girl to go back home, and he's very insistent that she goes home. And even Stephen's like, Doctor, I don't think that's the best course for her. I think she should stay with us. It'd be more safe. And the Doctor's like, no, she needs to go back home. She'll be fine, honestly, she'll be fine. And so she leaves, kind of disappointed. You can see it in the pictures, she looks really sad. So, yeah, and you could, and the connection with Stephen throughout the story have been building up as slowly to get trusted. She's the only one who believes that he wasn't a spy, that he's generally somebody who doesn't know about Paris and its political endeavours in recent days. So she trusts Stephen complicitly. And so, just before Stephen and the Doctor go into the TARDIS, the massacre basically starts, and there's wars and riots and stuff. So we kind of get like a grand exit to our story, but doesn't actually deal with the war itself. And there's a fantastic scene where Stephen is asking Doctor what happened, and then the Doctor explains that there's going to be this massacre that lasts for a few days that kills over, I think he said 11,000 people. Stephen basically names Nicholas, Gaston, and Anna, whatever her name was. And the Doctor is like, I don't know if she'd survive or not. It's possible that she could. And Stephen's just like, no, Doc, what the hell, man? You let that girl basically into a riot, and you didn't even know that she could be safe. She's not even like a huge historical person. We could have taken her in a TARDIS and she'd be safe. But the Doctor's hesitant that, no, we can't change history. We got to keep history in course. There's a chance that she's a big part of history, so she had to stay there. And he's like, I don't feel bad that I left her there to basically live out the massacre and have like a 50-50 chance that she lives or dies. And then Stephen's just like, right, that's it. The next time we land, Doctor, I'm getting off. And I'm leaving the TARDIS. And that is just a very impactful scene. Especially that throughout the story we've seen it from Stephen's point of view. And since the Dalek Master Plan is basically him dealing with a lot of death. And you see this story where he befriends these three characters, the two men and this girl. And you can really feel like I could really feel like that they could have had a spin-off with these three characters and Stephen. And then Stephen kind of like finds out later on that they're all going to be dead, basically, in a few short moments. So it really affects Stephen personally, and it really works. And so the Doctor lands in modern day Earth, and Stephen kind of leaves. And then the Doctor sits down and he has a great speech where he's like, they're all gone now. Even my daughter Susan couldn't understand. And Barbara, and he says Chesterton, but he gets his name wrong, which was like a running joke in the series. And then he corrects himself by saying Chesterton. So, yeah, the Doctor's like slowly like, right, I respect him. I shouldn't like mess up his name. And then he actually questions us like, should I go home? Back to my own planet. And then he's like, I can't go back. So, yeah, Stephen leaving was a very big part to his character. It's a shame then that Stephen comes back in a few minutes. But once this happens, some random girl walks into the TARDIS and doesn't even question the fact that the room is bigger on the inside. And this bit really destroys any atmosphere in the story. I mean, I know I shouldn't make a big deal about it because this is like literally the last 5 minutes of the episode. But imagine you're watching a marathon sprint or something, and you see somebody kind of like breaking the record. But then right at the end, you got like a clown being naked, jumping around the screen, and then it ends. You're going to be completely distracted from the story, and all that's on your mind is going to be that naked clown. So imagine something like that. This scene completely ruins the story for me. I don't know if it was John Utarates or Donald Tosh, but to introduce a new companion, this character becomes a new companion, not in the last episode like we've had with Stephen and Katrina, but literally in the last few minutes of the episode. Whose idea was that? And whoever it was should be shot if they're still alive. But I digress. And this girl, she basically explains that she's Dodo Chaplin, and she's like a really quirky character, and the Doctor's like, oh, just go now. But he's very thoughtful to her, and he's like, oh, please go and say, but he's not like, don't bother me. So you can see the Doctor's kind of change. He's a bit more sweethearted. And then Stephen kind of runs into the TARDIS as he notices two policemen are running into the TARDIS, mistaking it for an actual police box, and so the TARDIS kind of leaves. And then Stephen notices that Dodo's still in the TARDIS and is like, what the hell are you doing here? You do realise you've just literally can't go back home now. And she's like, yeah, I don't care. I have no parents. And the only person in my life is my auntie, and she's probably glad to see the end of me. It's like, really? That's how you decide to introduce this character? Yeah, Dodo Chaplin is not a very good companion. Hooray. And there's this whole debate where the doctor, he's talking to Stephen's talking to the Doctor, and is just like, Doctor, what the hell? You just took basically took this woman without even like her consent. And Dodo's like, I don't care. Let me take with you. And she doesn't even like realise it, like it's a time traveling machine. But she's like completely fine with it. And the doctor's like, yeah, she's fine. Go. Let her take her with us. So Dodo explains that her last name is Chaplin, and Stephen then is like, hold on, that girl Annie I befriended in Paris. Her last name was also Chaplin. So he comes up with this kind of theory that Dodo is like an ancestor to this Annie character. And that's how our story ends. So yeah, my thoughts on the full-on story is, if it wasn't for those 5 minutes at the end of it, it is a very great historical. It deals a lot with the politics and stuff. So it might not be for everyone. I know a lot of these pure historicals are not for everybody. It's more if you like interesting stories and like an epic, fun, enjoyable, like an espionage kind of thing. It's more, you're more like you sit down and you watch it and you think about it kind of storylines, and with no clear villain, and you get to experience the setting much more in depth than you would if it was a pseudo historical, or if there was just a lot of sci-fi elements. So, but I really enjoyed it. However, those last 5 minutes completely ruined the atmosphere and everything for me. So I can distance myself from those minutes, but only if I turn it off before that happens. But I didn't this time, so it really distracted this time. So there you go. There's the Massacre of St. Bella. The Massacre of St. Bella Eve. There you go. So join me next time where we have, hooray, a story with all of its episodes existing in the Ark. So I'll see you next time in Dodo Chaplin's first full story. I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon.